You are 31 years old. You have a job that pays real money now, not great money, but real money. Something in the range of $62,000 to $78,000 a year, depending on the year, the bonus, and the overtime. You have $22,000 in savings sitting in a high-yield account earning 4.6% interest, which sounds productive until you do the actual math and realize it's generating about $85 a month. You have a 401k you contribute to because your company matches and you're not an idiot. You have no investment accounts outside of that. You have never bought a stock intentionally. You have never analyzed a deal. You have never thought seriously about money as a tool rather than a resource you manage carefully so it doesn't run out before the next paycheck. But you've been watching. For 2, maybe 3 years now, you've been watching people talk about rental properties. A coworker who bought a duplex at 28 and seems quietly, inexplicably less stressed than everyone else. A podcast you started in traffic that uses words like cash flow, cap rate, and equity like they're ordinary. A video that found you at the right moment when you were tired enough of where you were to actually listen. You are not a kid anymore. You don't have the luxury of learning slowly through small mistakes with small money. You are 31 and the decisions you make in the next 4 years will determine the shape of the next 20. You understand this in the specific serious way that only people in their 30s understand it, because in your 20s you thought you had time and now you know that time is exactly what you've been spending. So you decide, not impulsively, you decide the way adults decide things, slowly and then all at once, after enough research that the fear becomes manageable, even though it never fully disappears. You are going to buy a rental property. The first thing that happens when you decide to buy a rental property is that you realize how much you don't know. Not in a discouraging way, though it is briefly discouraging, in the way that any new language feels impossible for the first 2 weeks and then starts to develop structure. You spend 90 days reading before you spend $1. You learn what gross rent multiplier means. You learn the 1% rule and its limitations. You learn what a cap rate is and why it matters more in some markets than others. You learn the difference between cash-on-cash return and total return, and why confusing them leads to bad decisions. You learn what a pro forma is, and why every seller's pro forma is optimistic in ways that are legal but inconvenient. You learn about vacancy rates, not the national average but the local average in the specific neighborhoods you're looking at, because national averages are trivia, and local averages are data. You learn what a debt service coverage ratio is because a lender will ask you about it, and you don't want to pause. You learn that property taxes vary not just by state but by county, by municipality, sometimes by street, and that a $198,000 property in one zip code can carry $4,800 in annual taxes, while a $210,000 property 4 miles away carries $2,900, and that difference changes your cash flow math entirely. This education is not glamorous. It happens on your couch at 10 p.m. after work, on Saturday mornings before anyone else is awake, and in your car between errands. Nobody sees it, nobody asks about it. You are building knowledge in silence the way all real preparation happens, without an audience, without applause, without any indication yet that it will pay off. By month 3, you can underwrite a deal in about 45 minutes. Not perfectly, but competently. You know what questions to ask and what numbers to pressure test. That competence, built quietly over 90 days, is worth more than the down payment you're about to write. You start looking at properties and immediately understand why people give up at this stage. The market is not organized around your needs. Listings are incomplete. Photos are optimistic. Descriptions use words like cozy and charming the way people use fine in response to how are you. Technically accurate, pointing at something you don't want to investigate too closely. You look at 34 properties over 11 weeks. You make offers on 3. The first is rejected without a counter. The second goes to someone who waived inspection, which you were not willing to do, which was the right call even though it stings. The third falls through after inspection reveals a foundation issue that would have cost $18,000 to address, and that the seller was not willing to credit in full. You do not quit. This is important. The search phase is where most people who could do this don't do it, not because the market beat them, but because the process exhausted them. The process is designed to exhaust you. It is slow and opaque and full of small defeats that feel larger than they are. You take 1 week off, recalibrate your criteria slightly, narrow your geography, and go back. Week 14, a single-family home, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, in a neighborhood with low vacancy, strong rental demand from young families, and hospital workers from the medical center 4 blocks away. Asking price is $214,000. The numbers work if you can get it at $204,000. You offer $201,500 with a 30-day close. They counter at $207,000. You meet at $204,500, and they accept. You are under contract. You are 31 years old and you are under contract on an investment property, and your hands are slightly unsteady when you sign the purchase agreement. Not from doubt, but from the specific physical sensation of a real decision with real consequences. You put $41,000 down, roughly 20%, which keeps you out of PMI, and gives you a mortgage payment of $1,089 a month at the rate you locked. Property taxes run $3,200 a year. Insurance is $1,140 a year. You set aside $150 a month as a maintenance reserve because the house is 22 years old and has opinions about its own upkeep. Total monthly expenses is $1,601. The neighborhood rental comps support $1,550 to $1,700 for a property like this. You price it at $1,595 to attract a quality tenant quickly rather than maximizing rent and sitting vacant for 6 weeks. You find a tenant in 18 days through a straightforward screening process. Credit check, income verification, 2 references, and a conversation. A nurse at the medical center, 34 years old, with clean credit and income is 3 times the rent. You sign a 12-month lease. Month 1 cash flow, -$6. You were not expecting to get rich in month 1. But -$6 is tighter than the spreadsheet suggested, and the spreadsheet suggested a small positive in the conservative scenario, so you look back at the numbers to find where the gap came from. Utility transfer fee you didn't account for. Locksmith for rekeying, $140. New smoke detectors to bring the property up to current code, $87. Small things, one-time things, you catalog them and move on. Month 3, +$61. Month 7, +$114. After a minor plumbing repair that cost $340 and reduced the month's net but didn't derail anything because you had the reserve. This is the unglamorous early chapter of every rental property that ever worked. It is not a highlight reel. It is $61 and $114 in 1 month of negative cash flow, and a tenant who pays on the first of every month like a contract she takes seriously, which she does, because good tenants take their commitment seriously, and you found one. The first thing that changes is not your bank account, it is your relationship with your own time. You are 32 now, and you own an asset, not a savings account. Not a 401k that exists in abstraction somewhere managed by people you've never spoken to. An asset, a physical thing on a street, occupied by a person whose rent arrives in your account on the first of the month. You built this, you chose it, underwrote it, negotiated it, financed it, and tenanted it. That sense of agency of having built a specific machine, rather than simply participating in a large abstract one, changes how you think about what else is possible. You start seeing your salary differently, not as income but as capital generation capacity. Every month you work, you are producing raw material that can either be consumed or converted. You've been converting $700 a month since you bought the property into equity, into reserves, into the slow accumulation of options. You start asking what else can be converted. You start looking at your monthly expenses not as a budget, but as an allocation problem. The cable subscription, the subscriptions you forgot about, the lunches that add up to $280 a month, you don't actually think about. You're not becoming cheap. You are becoming intentional, which is different and more useful. The second thing that changes is your fluency. You can talk to lenders now without feeling like a student. You can read a lease and understand what it's protecting and what it isn't. You can walk through a property and identify the things that will cost money in the next 3 years with reasonable accuracy. You have developed a physical intuition about real estate that no book can give you because no book can give it to you. Experience built it. The 34 properties you walked, the 3 offers you made, the 1 property you own, manage, and watch monthly. That intuition is an asset that doesn't appear on any balance sheet but compounds every time you use it. Your tenant renews. You raise the rent by $75, bringing it to $1,670. She agrees without significant pushback because the market has moved, and she knows it, and you've been a responsive landlord, and the relationship has earned that small increase. Your monthly net is now running $158 after all expenses and reserves. $158 a month is $1,896 a year. On a $41,000 down payment, that's a 4.6% cash-on-cash return. Unimpressive in isolation, but the property has also appreciated. Conservatively, at 4% annually on a $2,500 asset, you've added roughly $16,000 in value over 2 years. Your mortgage principal has been paid down approximately $4,200. Your total equity has grown from $41,000 to somewhere around $61,000, which is an unrealized return of nearly 50% on your invested capital over 2 years. You didn't feel it accumulate. That's the nature of equity. It builds in the background while you live your life, invisible until you look directly at it. You start the process of looking for a second property. You are 33. The search for property 2 is faster because you are better. You look at 14 properties instead of 34. You make 2 offers instead of 3. You close on a small multifamily, a side-by-side duplex listed at $268,000 in 9 weeks from first showing to close. You negotiate it to $261,000. You do a cash-out refinance on property 1 to pull $28,000 in equity, combined with $24,000 from savings, to reach the 20% threshold of $52,200 on the duplex. You now control $465,500 in real estate, with approximately $86,000 in combined equity. The duplex cash flows $380 a month net after all expenses on both units. Combined with Property 1, you are generating $538 a month in net rental income across 2 properties. This is the moment real estate starts to feel like a strategy rather than an experiment. But here is what it costs you that the numbers don't show. You are 33 and you are tired in a specific way. Not broken, not resentful, but genuinely stretched. You have a full-time job that takes 45 to 50 hours a week. You have 2 rental properties that together take 8 to 12 hours a month in normal months, and significantly more in the months when something goes wrong. You have a life that you are trying to maintain, relationships that deserve attention, a body that needs sleep and exercise, a mind that needs rest that isn't just the absence of work. You say no to things, more things than before. The weekend trip that would clean out your reserves. The group dinner where splitting the check equally means subsidizing 3 people's appetizers and wine when you ordered neither. The investment opportunity was pitched by a friend who uses the word passive incorrectly and doesn't know it. The friction in some relationships is real. Not because people are bad, but because your priorities have visibly shifted, and shifts of that kind read as judgment to people who haven't made the same shift, even when no judgment is intended. You don't explain yourself extensively. You stay quiet, and you stay on the path, and you understand that some distance is the price of a different direction. You are 35, 4 years since you bought the first property. Here is what exists. 2 properties, combined current market value is approximately $512,000 based on neighborhood comps. Combined mortgage balance of $374,000. Combined equity of roughly $138,000, up from $41,000 4 years ago. Combined net cash flow of $538 a month, or $6,456 annually. A 401k that has continued to grow through consistent contributions, now sitting at $67,000. A savings account of $14,000, leaner than before because capital has been deployed rather than stockpiled, which is not the same as being broke. Your net worth 4 years ago was approximately $89,000 in total, including all savings, retirement, and equity. Today, it is approximately $219,000. That is not a coincidence. That is the compounding of a decision made at 31, executed imperfectly but consistently, sustained through the months when it felt like nothing was happening because something was always happening beneath the surface. What is less visible in those numbers is the person that those 4 years built. You are not the same person who sat on a couch 3 years ago watching someone else's duplex purchase with a feeling you couldn't name. You understand money now in the way that only people who have moved it, deployed it, lost some of it temporarily, and watched it return understand money. You have negotiated, you have managed, you have made decisions under uncertainty with imperfect information and real consequences. You have been wrong, absorbed it, adjusted, and continued. That is a different kind of wealth. It doesn't appear on a balance sheet, but it is the thing that makes the balance sheet possible. People will tell you that you started too late. They will say it indirectly through the implication embedded in every piece of content that celebrates the 24-year-old who bought their first property. They will frame your 30s as a deficit, as years you lost, as a gap between where you are and where you could have been if only you had started sooner. This framing is both mathematically true and practically useless. Yes, the 24-year-old who bought in your city in 2018 has more equity than you. Yes, compound interest rewards early starts. Yes, a decade of appreciation and principal paydown that you don't have is real money that you won't have. These things are true. What is also true is this: you are buying your first rental property with 10 years of professional income behind you, with a credit score built over a decade of responsible use, with a career stability that a 24-year-old cannot have by definition, with a savings rate that reflects a mature relationship with money rather than a young person's first attempt at discipline. You can qualify for better financing, you have more reserves, you make fewer emotional decisions because you've had more time to observe the consequences of emotional decisions. You are a more capable investor at 31 than you would have been at 24, even if the market conditions had been better. The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is the only time that is actually available to you. You are not behind. You are exactly where a person who decided seriously at 31 is supposed to be. The question is not where you started. The question is whether you stay. Somewhere between 33 and 35, a shift happens that is difficult to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. The shift is not financial, or not only financial, it is psychological. It is the moment when your identity stops being organized around what you earn and starts being organized around what you own and what you've built. You stop thinking of yourself as someone with a job who also has some rental properties. You start thinking of yourself as an investor who also has a job. The sequence matters. The job is still important. The job funds the machine. But the machine is the thing. The machine is what you are building toward. The machine is what will eventually outlast the job, outpace the job, make the job optional in a way it has never been optional before. That shift from earner to builder is the real product of buying your first rental property in your 30s. Not the $538 a month, not the $138,000 in equity. Those are evidence of the shift. The shift itself is invisible and internal and worth more than both of them combined, because the shift is what produces the third property and the fourth. And the version of yourself at 45 who has built something real from a decision made at 31 on a Tuesday when you were tired of where you were. You are still 31 somewhere in this sentence, still deciding, still looking at $22,000 in a savings account, and a market that feels expensive, a process that feels complicated, and a version of your future that feels possible but not yet certain. The property is out there, the numbers exist that work. The tenant exists who will pay on time, treat the unit well, and renew the lease. The equity is waiting to be built in the property you haven't bought yet, in a neighborhood you may not have visited yet, or on a street whose name you don't know yet. None of that becomes real until you decide. The machine does not care that you are 31 and not 24. It does not care that you are starting later than you wanted to, or sooner than you planned to, or exactly on time in a way you won't recognize until much later. It opens every morning and it takes whoever shows up.